Okay. Hello, guys. How's everybody doing? So, I am back again. I was on a little while ago and I hopped off because I saw that Mary was on. Hey, Selena, I'm glad you're here. I saw that Mary was on and I don't get to catch Mary often live, so I thought I would just like totally ditch my whole scope and go watch Mary. And I did for a little bit and now I'm back. So if you didn't see Mary's scope, you should go catch it. She is reorganizing her whole house, Mary at not before 7. Um, and you know how it is with homeschool moms. Like, you've got school stuff everywhere and art supplies everywhere. And so if you're going to organize one space, then you kind of have to organize all of them all at once. And so she's in the middle of that, and it's pretty interesting to see. And she's got some kind of cool shelves, cabinets, organizational spaces, and stuff like that. So she's sort of showing the before so she can show the after later when she's done. So, hi, folks. I'm so glad to be on here. It's been a long time since I've been on Periscope, and I've missed it, so I'm glad to be back. My name is Lynna Sutherland. I'm homeschool mom to 7 kiddos, and I blog over at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels. The address is, well, there we go. The address is, can you see that? It's kind of fuzzy. hswotrainingwheels.com. And HSWO Training Wheels is where you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been away for a couple of weeks from Mama Moments, but my goal is to kind of get myself organized this weekend and get back up and running. I do that on my Facebook page, so if you follow or like the Homeschooling Without Training Wheels page on Facebook, you should see those Mama Moments pop up in your feed, and it's facebook.com/HSWO Training Wheels. So, hello, everybody. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. So I just had a couple of things that I wanted to share today, and one of them is music, and one of them is Bible. So Amy Milsick has been doing a different subject every week. Amy Milsick over at Busy Boys Brigade has been talking about a different subject each week, and this week she's been talking about music. I think I'm on the right week for music. And so I wanted to share something that we did last summer. So I took piano lessons when I was a kid, but it almost didn't count because I never was very good at it. So I'm not very musically inclined, but I felt like it was something I really wanted my kids to have a little bit of knowledge about. And so last summer we started learning to play the recorder. And I found these little books that I did with them over the summer about music theory. And this is from somebody who has like I took piano in 3rd grade kind of level of music knowledge. So it's called Music Theory Made Easy for Kids. And there's 2, levels. And this is the level 2 book just because we already threw away the ones because we finished those. And the 2 books were still around. But it's actually basically a sticker book, which I like because it's geared for little kids, like maybe even preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade age. And of course, last summer my son was 10. My oldest was 10. So it was a little young for him technically, but I felt like over the summer, that's kind of what you want. You want something that's just sort of fun and easy, and it doesn't really feel like the depth of schoolwork, like what you might do during the year. So I was just going to flip and find a good page to show you. Okay, so for example, here's a page where they're working on time signature. So they would have all these stickers to fill in. So they need a sticker that would show, 4 beats to a measure. So here they have like 2 quarter notes and a half rest adds up to 4. Or here they have a whole note adds up to 4. Or here they have a half note and a half measure rest that adds up to 4. So they take the stickers for that page and they fill them in according to what matches up with the time signature that's listed there. And then they also did some work on labeling, letter, the notes, the names of the notes. I'm trying to see if there's a good page that did that. But it was really, really simple. They did treble clef and bass clef in this book, but I only did the treble clef with them because we were learning to play the recorder. And so we really only did the pages that worked on the treble clef. So this is like a Christmas tree, and it's got thank you for inviting your followers. I really appreciate that. So it's got the different, notes, and then they stuck them on the page based on what letter, what the name of the note was. So, like I said, it was really easy. Not a lot of handwriting, not a lot of like labor-intensive work. It was just kind of quick and fun. And so they really enjoyed that. So that's just a little tip from like somebody who's not a music person. And I definitely did not want something where there was a rigid number of lessons, like 32 lessons, and we're going to have to get through all these lessons in order to be done. We skipped over some pages. Like I said, we only did the treble clef. We didn't even do the bass clef stuff. So, but it was fun, and they were not that expensive. They were maybe like $4 or $5 a person, and I got them for the 4 oldest kids. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to share was Melanie Wilson was talking this week about her Bible curriculum. And I wanted to say that, so this is not a rule or a commandment or anything, but hello, it's nice to have you. So here's what I use for my Bible curriculum. Just the Bible, okay? So now, I know a lot of people have curriculums they love. That's fantastic. So I'm not here to shame anybody or talk down any other programs or anything. But what I'd rather say is just that you don't have to have a curriculum for Bible, right? Because one of the reasons I don't have a curriculum for Bible is that I really want us to not have any kind of structure or schedule that we feel like we're trying to keep up with, that we're trying to meet with. So here's what Bible looks like for us. We all gather in the library. That's our fancy word for our living room. So we all gather in the living room. Those who are old enough to read have a Bible, just a plain old Bible. It's not like a children's Bible or anything else. It's just a plain old Bible. And we take turns reading out loud. And how much do we read? Well, it depends. We might read, a couple chapters if there's kind of a lot of plot going on and we want to hear some more about what's happening. We might read just a few verses if something comes up that's worth discussing or that somebody asks about. And I generally keep some resources nearby, like a Bible, what's it called? Bible encyclopedia. So if you want to look up a place, Mount Hermon, what's that? Where was it? Where, what's the significance of that? And, I definitely don't understand every single thing that I read in the Bible. So, I think the thing maybe that's intimidating sometimes to people is, well, I'm not going to understand all of that. So I need a curriculum that's really going to explain it. But what I've discovered over time is that the curricula that I've looked at, or some of the things that I use, they don't explain everything. I mean, it's at a child's level. They're not going to explain everything. And so there are sometimes sections that we're reading through, like we were going through the book of Joshua. And when we got to the end of the book of Joshua, there's just a whole lot of, they conquered this section and they conquered that section and they went over this river and over these mountains. And, I basically said to the kids, I think if we had a really detailed map, we maybe could trace all this and we maybe could, see where all this is. But I think the main thing that we need to get out of this is just that they're going forward and they're conquering the territory that God has provided for them, and we really didn't get into it in a lot more depth than that. A lot of the words they couldn't even pronounce. A lot of the words I wasn't sure how to pronounce. So it's not so much that, I'm just an amazing Bible scholar and I know all of this off the top of my head, and that's why we don't use a curriculum, but it's more because I really believe that the Bible is simple enough to be accessible to everyone. Now, does that mean that everyone can fully understand the depth of every detail of every, passage in the Bible? No, of course not. I mean, you could spend your whole life studying it and there would still be more to get out of it. But in general, I really want this to be just us and the Bible, and we're reading it and we're discussing it. And I will tell you, there have been so many things that have come up that way, that we've been talking about, that just, Now, again, I'm not trying to diss anybody who has a curriculum that they love. I'm just saying you don't have to have a curriculum. And it's perfectly okay with your, if you're reading something with your children and you say, I don't really understand what that means either. I mean, we were reading the story of Samson, and it talked about how he ripped something apart like one rips apart a young goat. And I was like, guys, I don't exactly know what that means. I don't have any personal experience with ripping apart young goats, but I guess what they're trying to say is like he's really strong and it was easy for him. So I don't know, so it's okay to say I don't understand all the details, or I don't understand this historical reference, or I don't know where this place is, or I don't remember who this character was, or whatever. But I think I want my kids to see this is something that the average everyday person can just pick up and read, and for the most part, can understand the flow of what's happening, or the important points that are being illustrated and that kind of thing. So that's what we do. And actually, honestly, we use our Bible time kind of dually as our phonetic instruction for readers. So I have 11, 9, 8, and 6-year-olds who can read right now. And the 6-year-old is a relatively new reader, and the 11-year-old is a little bit of a struggling reader. And so, and thankfully, they're both willing to read out loud. They're not exactly, because we're going to do it anyway. Now, if one of them was like embarrassed about reading or something, I guess I'd have to think differently about that. But they both voluntarily will read. And at this point, they have enough. No, it's fine, Selena. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't coming across that way. Anyway, but you're fine. No. So, anyway, so they're willing to read out loud, and at this point, it's been very helpful just to, when they come to a word that they're stuck with, to help them, or maybe remind them. You remember how TURE says "chur" at the end of a word, or something like that. So, and then also it's great we've had all kinds of discussions about things like what is an appositive, okay? So when it says, David, son of Jesse, okay, well, that's an appositive because David is the subject of the sentence, and then he's being renamed as, it's giving further information about him, son of Jesse. So, little things like that come up in the reading. We've talked about, using your voice to help your listener understand, where there's a period or a comma when you're reading a quote or something like that. So, it's really been helpful to just plain old read the Bible and talk about it. And I'd like to do some other scopes another time about some of the things that, some of the fantastic conversations that have come out of just reading the Bible, because what the Bible is full of, I think a lot of people think maybe the Bible is a lot of rules, and it's a lot of commands and laws, and, and I'm not saying that's not in there, but really what the Bible is a lot of, is a lot of really kind of just personal sketches. And I'm not saying that's the main point of the Bible is to be a collection of personal sketches, but there's so much in there, so much rich fodder for just discussing, do you see what happened to this person and how they thought about that and how that affected the way that they reacted or how they behaved? And so that's been really some of the most fantastic discussion that we've had. So I'd like to come back and scope later about some of those things, and the kind of questions that we've been able to talk about and interact with about that. Okay, so all that said, I don't think you need a curriculum. I think you can just pick up your Bible and read it and talk about it and say, I don't know. I'm going to ask Daddy when he gets home, or I'm going to go, Google it, or I'm going to go pull out this commentary that I have and look at it, or just plain old, I don't know. I think that's okay. But I will say that I have found this helpful, especially with the kids. It's called 30 Days to Understanding the Bible. And it's not like 30 days to mastering the Bible, but 30 days to kind of getting a general idea of the overview of the Bible. And I would even say, because I know some of my friends who follow me on Periscope are secular homeschoolers. Okay, Selena, good to see you. But I would say that this would even be a valuable resource for anyone who even, was not interested in doing, reading the Bible as a spiritual foundation. I would recommend everybody read and study the Bible in their homeschool. First of all, because it's, basically the best-selling book of all time ever. certainly classical literature, but also our culture is saturated with discussion about the Bible. Everywhere your kids go, they're going to hear people using the Bible, talking about the Bible, quoting the Bible. And so I would argue that whether you see it as a foundation for your spiritual journey or not, it really is something that you ought to interact with, and interact with, yourself, and interact with your children, so that they'll have some firsthand exposure to it. So what I found so helpful about this book, 30 Days to Understanding the Bible, is that it just kind of gives a really basic kind of outline overview. And for me, I like big picture. Like, give me the big picture, and then I can dive in and look at the details, and I understand them better because I know where they fit in. Okay, so this is basically, this one page right here will give you a pretty summary overview of what the whole book does. So I don't know how well you can see that on Periscope, but he basically goes through and divides up all of Scripture into 12 basic, like eras or time periods of history, of biblical history. And then, the chapters in the book are talking about each one of these. So he goes over creation, patriarchs, Exodus, conquest, judges, kingdom, exile, return, a period of silence, the gospel, the church, and then missions. And he has this chart that kind of explains sort of like who would be the, in this era, who would be the primary figure of that time, where was it located, like geographically, where did that kind of take place, and then a little summary. And there's a lot in here that's a real great resource. I have not read this with my kids, but I read it myself to help, just to help me understand kind of a background framework to go on. And it includes a lot of maps, so you're familiar with, the geography, what bodies of water are we talking about here, and what areas of land. It's a really great overview, and it talks about, there are some other chapters that aren't particularly about one of the sections. Like, for example, there's a wonderful chapter on poetry. Cover again. Okay, so 30 Days to Understanding the Bible. I don't know anything about Max Anders or anything about his, I don't know anything about him personally, but anyway, this book I found helpful. So there's a section on, for example, poetry. And so again, great overlap with just your literature discussions. It talks about, I'm not thinking really fast on my feet here, but what's the word for literary, literary forms of, like metaphor and simile and parallelism and just, terms in literature that you would want your children to understand if they were reading. Okay, so here we go. Parallelism. Let's see. I'm too slow here. Synonyms. Figures of speech. That's the word I was looking for. Figures of speech. Simile, metaphor, hyperbole, rhetorical questioning, personification, things like that. So just helping your children to understand those kinds of things that they might come across. So, okay, so those were the two resources that I had. Music Theory Made Easy and 30 Days to Understanding the Bible. And that's all I had to share tonight. It was really good to see you guys again. And I hope that everyone has a great weekend. I might have a chance to hop on again tomorrow afternoon. It's just been crazy. Like, summer schedule, things are different. And the toddler dropped his morning nap. So, I don't know, all the times where I used to feel like, okay, everybody's settled and in their place, and I have a little moment that I could, close the door between me and the children and everything would be okay. Those moments kind of feel like they've evaporated. So, anyway, working on finding a new groove for the summer. So, all right, good to see you guys. Have a great evening.